Well, what we need the media to give us is the dictionary definition of static: criticism, opposition, unwanted interference. We need a media that covers power, not covers for power. We need a media that is the fourth estate, not for the state. And we need a media that covers the movements that create static and make history.
Well, I found that to be really excellent. And the reason I put that in there, even though it's just a short little clip, was it reminds me of the case of Phil Donahue. So for those of you that don't know, he had the highest rating, the highest rated show on MSNBC back in 2003. A large reason for that was that he was pretty much the only, if not the absolute only anti-war commentator on MSNBC. I think he was. So he had anti-war guests on his show predominantly, and his message was against the Iraq War. Again, perfectly reasonable now looking in retrospect. And he had the highest rating on the entire network in 2003, and he was canceled, despite having the highest rating. So that is what the establishment media bias really is about. And in case you think it had nothing to do with his anti-war message that they fired him, an internal memo was released, written by MSNBC, that pretty well explains why they actually fired him. So this is a direct quote from the memo. Donahue would be, quote, "a difficult public face for NBC at a time of war. He seems to delight in presenting guests who are anti-war, anti-Bush, and skeptical of the administration's motives." Yeah, that's kind of the point. Because when we look back at it, of course, the war in Iraq was predicated on the idea that Iraq had WMDs, which turns out they didn't. And it basically toppled an authoritarian government, let's call it what it is. But once it toppled that government, it led to a power vacuum that created the rise of ISIS. So when we look back on it, we needed more voices like Donahue's, and yet that's the exact reason that they're firing him. So that attests to the media bias that we see today. And we couldn't be seeing it more, this establishment bias, than with Donald Trump, who I think this is really one of the most underreported aspects of his presidency. He asked Jim Comey if he could imprison journalists. That's not a question you should be asking if you're the president of the United States, okay? And imprisoning journalists is something that would bring our democracy index score, which is already almost on like a borderline between democracy and authoritarian. It could bring it down to North Korea levels if we start imprisoning journalists. That's not the direction we want to go. And it's worrisome that this guy has another potentially 3 years going on, even though betting markets have his impeachment at 25% right now. So yeah, right now is a time, now more than ever, that we should be worried about outsider voices in the media, like ours, especially with Trump having an idea of imprisoning journalists. So right on, Amy Goodman, your message is really good.